Hi, this is Eric Bourne, a professor at Harrisburg Area Community College, and I'm here to talk to you today about the MLA citation format. Now, this is a big one, folks. You gotta know this. You cannot write successfully at the college level without being able to properly cite your sources, without being able to tell your readers where your ideas, words, and information are coming from. Now, this presentation is going to focus on a lot of the basic ideas. There'll be a lot of definitions in this presentation. Don't let that deter you. These basic definitions are where most of the important concepts lie, and most of the serious errors that I encounter as a professor occur because of some lapses in understanding here. So let's dive in. Let's look at some of these ideas. First off, let's talk about this term citation. What are we talking about here? Citation generally is the process of telling your reader where the ideas, words, and information in your essay came from. Now, there are a few important keywords here. Number one, process. We use the word process here because there are a number of steps. This isn't a simple one-and-done thing. There's a number of things you need to do to include research in your essay. Secondly, let's note how general this ideas, words, and information line is. This covers everything that you want to bring in from outside sources into your essay. Things outside of your head and your experience, things that you're looking up elsewhere. Now, citation process, generally speaking, is really easy because most of the time, ideas, words, and information in your essay are yours. Things that you can competently and confidently write sitting at your computer without the aid of websites full of research, books, what have you. What you can write off the top of your head, you can claim, and your name at the top of the paper tells us who the source is. We worry about citation. The citation process becomes detailed and specific when you quote. And here's a mantra I really want you to hang on to. You need to cite your sources when you quote. Now, quotation is a word that most of my students know, but need to refine. This is a word we use a lot, but we use it often very loosely. And for the purpose of this discussion, in knowing when we need to cite our sources, we need a very good definition of what quotation is. Quotation is when you present the ideas and or words of another person in your essay. Quotation occurs when, in the process of putting together your document, you want to present the material of somebody else. You may choose to present their exact wording, a piece, a sentence, half a sentence, a few sentences of their essay at a time in what we call a direct quote. But if you're presenting their ideas, summarized, paraphrased, however seemed appropriate to you into your essay, you're still quoting. That's still a form of quotation. You're still presenting somebody else's work. This can allow us to say that basically if you're looking something up in order to write a sentence in your essay, you're quoting somebody, and you need to follow the citation process. Whenever you're just sitting and typing away in your Word window without looking elsewhere, you shouldn't need to cite a source. But the moment you go outside of that window, the moment you go to a book, to a website, to an article, to a newspaper, to find material to include in your essay, you're quoting, and you need to be concerned about the citation process. The reason why this is so important is because failing to properly cite a quote is considered plagiarism. Wherever there is quoted material, directly quoted, summarized, or paraphrased, but there is not the formal indication of where you got this information and words, this is plagiarism. And plagiarism is punishable with all manner of unpleasant things for you. Because it is a fundamentally dishonest means of writing, in my class you automatically get a 0 on an assignment with plagiarism. I reserve the right to refer the matter to administration. This sets off a large series of consequences which you really don't want to see. The 0 is the start. Don't let it go further. Okay, let's back off the stern stuff a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about these other terms. For one, this MLA. What is MLA? Well, there are a number of different formats for citing sources in a paper. There are different organizations, different contexts in which you can write. They're different in key ways. They basically answer the same questions. They provide guidelines for the same situations. What do you do when a quote is presented in an essay? What material do you include at the end for your readers to find your sources? All these questions are answered by these different formats. MLA is simply the one put forward by the Modern Language Association. I teach it in my class because it is common in college English and courses and others. I will note that there's another common citation format you'll use often in writing papers in the nursing department, in history and psychology. It's called the APA citation format. I can help you with that individually if you need help with that. You find me during my office hours. I won't speak about it directly in class time. Okay. So, if you're writing an essay and you've brought in information from outside, you want to quote it in your paper, what do you do? What is this citation process? Let's get an overall idea of the steps involved. Now, this will be a little oversimplified. We'll definitely need to flesh it out as the semester goes, but this will be an excellent start for us. First off, we're worried about quotation marks. Put quotation marks around any words you've quoted. Compare what you've just written in your essay with the source, and where it matches exactly, you need quotation marks. Make sure you surround all of your directly quoted text, but only your directly quoted text. Number 2, make sure your reader knows who you're quoting from, and preferably, in almost all instances, make sure they know about this before they actually get to the quoted text. Indicate that measure of respect to your sources by letting your reader know what you're up to. We use what are called signal phrases often to indicate this. Phrases like he said, Smith writes, Johnson argues, prior to a quotation, both to connect our words to theirs, but also to give your reader the heads up that the quotation is happening. Number 3, immediately after your quote, put some information about your source inside of parentheses. Pair parentheses immediately after the quote, but before you get to the closing punctuation of that sentence. Give me some parentheses. Now, what do you put inside those parentheses? The answer to that is a little more complicated than I have time for in this presentation. Suffice it to say that it's brief and it's determined by the context of the sentence that you've written and by the type of source that you have. Our work with in-text citation will help you find more clarity on what to put in. I can say that the common bit of information put inside here in the parenthetical citation is the author's last name and the page number. That's your gold standard. Finally, on a separate page at the end of your essay, provide lots of information about your source. This is called a works cited page, and it should include an entry for each source that you quote from in the body of your essay. Works cited entries are very detailed. They have very specific format. They take some practice, some specialized knowledge in order to write. I will be helping you this semester with a couple of different kinds of works cited entries, working you through step by step how we go about constructing them. For the moment, I want you to know that you'll need to be using resources, MLA guides, to help you write these works cited entries. You're not going to be able to memorize step by step how to do each and every one. Get used to the idea that you're going to have to find an example entry, find a guide, and use it to help you construct each of your works cited entries. To conclude our presentation today, I want to give you a few very practical, very loose tips for simply avoiding plagiarism. Because I know a lot of my students still feel that they're in the process of learning MLA and there's so many details and it seems hard to be following them, yet you're getting stern warnings from me that if you plagiarize, you're going to get a 0. I want to help you in that situation. I don't want you to go into research essays with that much anxiety. So let me talk about some things that I know you can do that will help you avoid plagiarism while you're still learning all the nuts and bolts of MLA. First off, the one thing that I have to insist on is that you have to know the moment when you need to start the citation process. If you look up information to write your sentence, even if you paraphrase it, you're going to need to do some citation. Get used to that. Let that be an automatic reaction. You're bringing in other stuff from other sources. Start citing. Number 2, you got to be good with these quotation marks. You can't delay. Don't put off putting in your quotation marks until you're done writing your rough draft. As you're writing that sentence, make sure you have those quotation marks in place. I cannot give you any leeway in this regard. Number 3, this whole parenthetical citation thing. It probably is a little intimidating that I can't give you a simple, straight answer as to what to put inside of them. For the moment, to avoid plagiarism, don't worry too much. Just have the parentheses after your quotes and put in something. Something that seems relevant to telling me who you got the quote from. The author's name is a good one. You don't have that, maybe a title, put in a page number. If you give me something, I can give you credit for trying to cite, and I don't have to give you a 0 for plagiarism. And finally, this works cited page. The works cited page is intimidating. It's going to be stressful for you. However, at the bare minimum, give me some information to go out and find the source again. Do this for yourself, for your notes. You should be able to find your sources again in case you need more information and for going back later and figuring out these works cited entries. So just add a separate page at the end of your document. Just write down information about your source. If it's a web page, grab its URL, copy and paste that in. That'll at least give you a tool for going back. If it's a book, if it's a newspaper, write down relevant information that'll help you get back to it. If you include this information in your essay for me, it won't be a correct works cited entry, but I can give you credit for providing me information about your source, and that will allow me to still give you a grade on the essay. That's important to you, that's important to me. You'll clearly need to do more work at this point to have a full and correct citation process. I'm not promising that these loose tips will give you an A on your essays. However, it will give you a grade that is higher than 0. And that'll give you a starting point from which to build up towards the papers you want, towards the grades that you want. Alright folks, we're going to call it good right there. Keep in mind that there is more to come. We're going to need to help you firm up the idea of these in-text citation. There'll be some punctuation discussions to be had. We're going to need to work with several different kinds of works cited entries. We're going to need to talk about some quotation, some conventions for what happens when you include quotations in papers. However, all of those in their due